Hello again, people, and we are back with another space. It's not going to be 2 hours or 3 hours or 10 hours this time. We're going to try and be reasonable today, but back with George and CK, and we're going to talk about this top four race because heads have gone, people. Heads have gone, and everyone seems to have lost their marbles. Let's put it that way. How you doing, boys?
Good, bro. Not too bad. Just came back from work, so living the good life. But yeah, I don't know. It seems odd to me because I think the general consensus on the timeline and everything is it's just crazy that a couple of games can sway people's opinions so heavily. Like I think Arsenal. I've said this before. I've heard at least, but we as a fan base are probably the most flippant fan base that's out there. Like we can go from top of the world to relegation to somewhere in the middle about doomed for Europe. Like I've seen people go like there's no way for us to get back in terms of getting into Europe now. Europe's done, the season's over, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, do you even believe what you're saying? Because it's kind of insane to me. It really is. But yeah, we'll try to make some sense of it. Hopefully now.
CK?
Yeah, like as I said, most reactionary fan base there is. What the whole year we've lost 4 games, 2 games in the months we've lost, and suddenly Arsenal fans have forgotten what it's like to lose. And I said this after the first loss, like the reaction I saw was it was like a Man City losing. Like, oh, we haven't lost in so long. I forgot what it's like to lose. Like for me, like I've gotten used to losing. Obviously, like the losses are bad, and Spurs playing after us both times, and then smashing the team they're playing hasn't helped, and it's what has like really like increased all the reaction. Like Spurs winning what 4-0 versus Villa after we lost 2-1 had a big impact on because it got worse as the day went on. The reaction to the game and stuff like that. But top four can't be over. Simply can't be over when you're 1 point behind the team that you have to play, and you have played less games than them. So we have what, 9 games left, and Spurs have 8 if I remember correctly.
It's one less, I think. I think it's 8 and 7, I'm pretty
Eight
sure.
and seven, yeah, and we have to play them. Obviously, we've got like Chelsea, Man U, West Ham, Leeds. Oh, sorry, not Leeds. And West Ham are through to the semi-finals now as well. So yeah, like, obviously it's overreaction for me. Like, how can you be it's guaranteed 1 month, and then 2 games later be we have no chance. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So for me, it's just like people are just over emotional. And if we win the next game, I'm sure the reaction will be like, "We're back on track. We're back on track. We can still get it." Da, da, da. So for me, it's just emotion right now, and we need a. Obviously, now we have what 3 games in the next week and a bit.
It'll
So
it, it'll be cut open,
mm,
right? The next week, the picture is going to change, and I think part of it is because there's been an anxiety that most people in general on the time, like I'm seeing many people talk prior to our losses that, yeah, top four is on the cards. Even the very, the very negative accounts were coming around that top four was a possibility, and it was because they went so hard earlier in the summer that they convinced themselves that we had one of the worst windows. I think you guys remember back ESPN and a couple of the major news outlets, they were looking at who had one of the worst windows, and Arsenal were like 17th or 18th out of
yeah,
20.
18.
And it's because people had a misrepresentation of the quality that we recruited, but also the level of our team. They just simply did. And when it got to the point where they exceeded our expectation or their expectations rather, and it became tangible for them, it turned into this emotional cry for trying to understand how we got there and looking for an excuse, positive or negative. Now, we'll definitely have a chat about the injuries and our response, to those injuries and Mikel because he hasn't impressed me, and not even not impressed me, but he's really annoyed me in terms of how he's handled the last 2 games. And that's a valid conversation to have. But ultimately, when you do look at this league and what we've done in general, you can never make a comment on an outcome based off 2, 3, 4, even 5 games. You know, in the league, I think that it's only 4 teams that have won 5 on the bounce. And by the way, we're one of them. And um, if that's going to be the case, then how can you sit there with a bold face and say with the last remaining 7 or 8 games that there's going to be a perfect record? By the way, on a team that hasn't done it all season. Period. End of story. And the team, ironically,
if they win on thingy is Friday. If they win on Britain's Brighton, it'll be 5. That's where they're at the moment.
There you go. So but they haven't done it yet, and we have. So I don't understand the logic. So for me, I get the anxiety, but you can't be so flippant to go from your favorites to there's no chance to out of Europe. Like that yo-yo seems absolutely insane to me. But maybe we get started about like kind of asking how people feel about the injuries and how people feel about how to solve those injuries. Because I think we've been pretty vocal on here about the solution. Mikel hasn't done it, and I think that's a valid concern. I've been very upset with Mikel because I used last year's occurrence as kind of an experience thing, and at the very least, we didn't have the backups to change things. You want to debate quality, yay or nay? That's another story. Because, Bambi and Nuno Tavares are players that are project. We knew this when they were being signed, but regardless of what you feel on quality, they offer you an option. That wasn't there to Mikel last year. So for me, the first time that I saw him not do it well with Villarreal and we knew how that kind of period went. In my mind, I'm like, it's not right. I didn't agree with his decisions, but okay, fine. You didn't have the option to change, therefore I can understand you getting it wrong. We all will get things wrong. This year, where I'm less forgiving, is we have those options, and because of a bad period, you're choosing not to do it. That becomes a pattern for me. That becomes a conscious choice, and that's where you have to criticize Mikel because he's been forced to change the system, and it's something that we've all said, and it boils down to really having a discussion about an honest discussion about Lacazette, and it's less for me about the injuries that we have, and more so it highlights the issues that we always had. Just our better players mask those issues. So when you lose pillars, the worst of yourselves gets accentuated. When you have those best players, you can cover the wool a little bit with some of those holes. And we're just seeing really what, for me, I've been seeing all season. So, there's solutions that we can do. We've talked about them kind of on the pod, going back to a pivot, having your 10s between the lines, having a striker that is moving, because a big part of why we are the way that we are with build up is because our striker doesn't move and he hides and he has no technical security. And so what's left then is it's very easy for the opposition just to crowd the center. And if you don't add an option in the back to help with progression in that sense, your build-up's going to be stale. It's going to be slow. We're going to see the U-shaped passing, and that won't change until Mikel changes himself. There's a little bit of good news on the horizon. Laka hasn't been pictured in training, so we might be
twice
now, which is excellent news. But on a level, right? Like I'm more annoyed that Mikel has made this a competition. And I've said this before on other pods. In reality, these results, these injuries, they don't worry my resolve about top 4. I still very much think that we're on pace to get top 4. But what's annoyed me is he's made it a competition. He's made it a drag race where we could have gone clear by responding properly to those changes. Losing a big central progressor, you put your experienced progressor in the midfield. One thing that I haven't seen online, by the way, guys, is when you do look at Granit Xhaka and the debate about putting him at left back or not, what I've never understood is we recruited in the back line to help our build-up, right? Why would you put one of your best build-up progressors in the base pod or in the backfield in the first phase? Because even if he's at his best, Granit Xhaka, the ball is only going to the middle third. That isn't a problem for us. It never has been. The problem has been keeping the ball in the final third and getting it there often enough. That's always been our problem. So why would you move one of your best box entry passers into the back line? Never made sense to me. Never understood that. Because if Granit Xhaka makes those passes that he's making 10 to 15 yards up the pitch, they result in finding your players between the fullback and the center back, as opposed to finding your players between the two center midfielders of the opposition. And that's what's happened between Brighton, between Palace. They've crowded the middle. We haven't been able to get Odegaard on the pitch and on the ball properly. You know, he's lost his ability to kind of influence the game. Sambi's young, and you increase the distances, and you're basically asking an inexperienced youngster to cover the distances with two attacking midfielders. It doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. And at first you can blame the inexperience of a manager. You could do that last season. You can't do that this season. He's got the players to do that pivot, to do that left back role. You bought Nuno Tavares. You can rehabilitate that situation. And understanding that Lacazette is a major thorn and kryptonite to this side's ability to even talk about, you know, your chances created. I think Mo's talking about here being 16th in the league for big chances created. I have a big issue with that stat. It's really misleading. But in terms of creativity, I think what your major point is the lack of creativity. And that becomes a direct result of the lack of movement from our striker. The lack of movement up there makes our build-up slow. And when your build-up slow, you don't get the ball quick enough to your attackers and more frequent 1v1 situations, but also you don't get it to them in the areas that they need to hit. So for me, big issue is let's improve that buildup. It really is the crux to this change that we need to do. And Laka, the sooner he is out, the better it is for this team. The sooner we get our best.
There's no burst. He's not having a burst anymore. He's lost his burst. He's lost the ability to accelerate off from a starting position. He can't, and he doesn't have the stamina either to continue with what he does provide over a long period of time. And it's very, very simple. You've got to do two things, and you've said it perfectly in terms of revert to the pivot, take Lacazette out. Like, forget. Even if you want to play, for example, even if you want to do Cedric left back, White right back, and then go, you know what I mean? Like this is another option. But the main thing for me is get Xhaka in the midfield, revert to the pivot, and get that structure in the first phase. Get the ability to get the ball out of our half with aplomb, with ease, with the ability to do it at pace. That's the main thing for me. You need to be able to get out of there. It's not even just about the what do you call it, the positioning as such. It's about the lack of movement and the lack of ability to pass through the lines in that first phase, and that's where it's breaking down. Because as you mentioned, there's no movement, there's no ability to find space, because you're not having players who can just make that 5-yard dash into space, because everyone seems to be so static because there's no movement and there's no space being created centrally by your striker. You need a striker that's able to pull players out in positions so people can make runs in behind, or you need someone who's able to link play and actually create the overloads that you want to create on either side of the pitch. For me, what the main issue is the inability to play at the correct tempo. I think that's the major crux of the issue for me. You can't play at tempo with Laka up front, and that's simple. When you have Partey there, he's able to dictate tempo. He's able to be that player that can play between the lines, take the ball, carry, and play a great pass through with verticality. You don't have that right now, because you're putting Sambi, who could do that, deep and making him putting him where he's unable to take the ball out of that first phase because he's surrounded.
Well,
and
the trouble made is when what teams have done is they've scouted us, and what the frustrating part for me is we actually employ a lot of what teams scout on us to do. One of our biggest what is one of our biggest off the ball systems that we do. We employ a 1-2 press. We have someone sitting on the opposition DM, and we crowd that press in the center. We do this, guys, very regularly all season. Teams have just decided to do that against us. So they would put it on Partey. And Sambi will get the same thing. But the issue is Sambi doesn't have the same off-the-ball positional sense. as the other, and that's fine. He's a youngster; he's not meant to. But when you do that, and you increase the distances for people that are inexperienced and not new in the team. By the way, this goes for Nuno Tavares as well. It's poor from a coach. Like when you introduce new players into the squad, you need to make sure that the distances are tight, by the way. And this is also why coaches, like when you look at Thomas Tuchel and what he did with Chelsea, and squads that were in transition, people that had larger distances, it was very simple. He employed a 3-4-3, a formation that naturally, a back three, shortens the distances for people. It makes it easier for you to understand your role. And so for me, it's really quite simple. You do a small tweak in the system. We normally build in a 3-1 recently. Let's change that. Add a midfielder in the middle of the park. Add another option for this inexperienced pro. Then when you add that, trust your left back that you bought as a backup left back, who, by the way, hasn't been horrible the entire season. Sure, he's run into poor form. I can understand that, but he has had a period of good form. So you know it's in there. Put him in places, though, that he's comfortable with. Don't ask him to build from the back like he is. In those positions, by the way, when Nuno Tavares was doing well, we built in a 2-4-4. Have him build in a 2-4-4. Get him up the pitch. Okay? When we're looking at the striker, we've talked about Lacazette. Now, I think, Mush was having a question about having an Eddie up top or Martinelli. Mate, you know me, Martinelli 9 has to be the decision. But it's not as black and white. You have two formations for me. You have the pseudo 10 between the lines, which will really work well against Chelsea and Spurs because they hate floating 10s between the lines. They don't do well against that system. So you'll want a Martinelli up top for those games. But you can make ESR in the false 9 role exactly what Lacazette was doing. But by the way, adding somebody that can get into the box and also who is our highest goal scorer in the team. And so he can do the Laka role very easily. We have Martinelli touchline wide, and you can also have Nuno Tavares and ask him to underlap a lot more. Like that's a tweak in the system. Like these things aren't like when we have debates about this on Twitter, I think it's because people are still in their FIFA formation arguments, and it makes no sense to me. Have a front four of Emile Smith-Rowe, Martinelli, Bukayo Saka, and Martin Odegaard. Have a front four of our highest, most productive attacking players and get them as close together as possible and get them as close to goal as possible. That has to be the very basics. And when we talk about things that we can do, okay, those are the tweaks that you can make to emulate stuff. But ultimately, we need to get our youngsters into the box as quick as we can and as fast as we can. So I think when you're talking about can people be backboards, ESR and Martinelli, Lacazette hasn't been a backboard. Lacazette's had the least touches of anybody we talked about. Chris, you had that beautiful diagram. He's had less than 40 touches in the last 5 games. The last time he had one was against Wolves. So this idea that Lacazette was a backboard, even in our productive period, is false. He just wasn't. He wasn't touching the ball. So there's that's not a problem that you're missing right now. So for me, very simple. Let's add that. I do think Emile Smith-Rowe's been carrying an injury, by the way, guys. He wasn't fit over the weekend. No doubt about that. And, that 60-minute sub was a kind of injury sub. So we do have to maybe wait to see how that situation evolves. But I think we're very lucky that we're facing Southampton. I don't want to get into that preview because we're going to have that tomorrow. But in terms of Arsenal, I think it's really simple. We have to go back to a pivot. We have to employ the backup left back that we bought for this very purpose. And we have to make sure that the distances for Nuno and Sambi are as close together as possible because they're inexperienced pros and they're not going to be great off the ball. We know this. So let's reduce the distances off the ball that they have to travel. Get an experienced partner next to those players that are inexperienced and let the players that have been scoring goals for us the most consistently be in positions to score. Don't put Emile.
Can I share a fear that I have? Because it's quite clear, especially if Laka is unfit for Southampton, is that we might get a Beereth debut. That's my fear. Because, let me hear me out. Because we don't have a third striker. Unless he puts Pepe up front, who we bring off the bench?
Mikel doesn't trust.
Eddie starts. Say Eddie starts.
Mikel doesn't trust youngsters that he hasn't been able to blood through in a preseason. Beereth hasn't had even a cameo or a debut. He won't be a factor. And also Beereth won't be won't be somebody that fixes what people want from a Lacazette.
I don't think he will fix it. That's why I'm saying it's a fear, because I just feel like
I don't think there's a chance that even happens unless everybody's
that's
injured.
all I'm saying. I'm just afraid
Unless
because
everybody gets injured.
we're just short at the moment, and that's the fear that he's just gonna. He's never been one, because I agree with you. He's never, in terms of evidence, what his process is. He doesn't trust you to like just throw youth in there when they're not ready. Like even with Emil, it was a case where Emil really had to earn it. Like he had to get it. He was brought in very slowly, but I don't know. We've got no forwards, man. And if it is,
we do though. We do. Current mate, I really I'll let Chris go because I've talked for a while. I really push back on the idea that we have no forwards. I think what people aren't realizing is that we have no midfield. We have it's a lot farther back. In fact, the forwards is the one thing that we have, and we haven't leaned into it enough. But yeah, go ahead, Chris. I don't want to.
Well, I don't think there's a chance. We probably see Saka striker before we see Burf play striker, which is for Saka to play striker would be mad extensive. So for me, I just bench Lacazette. Honestly, that's the first thing I do before I do anything else. And I think Arteta just needs to keep it simple and get out of his own way and just play the players that he bought for the roles that he bought them for. He bought Tavares to play left back, and he needs to play him. He needs to get out of his feelings or whatever he's feeling about Tavares, and he keeps subbing him in the first half. Like, just play the player you bought to play.
I want to ask, because I remember you saying this to me. I don't know if it was on stream or off stream, but I remember you saying we had to bench one of a couple of players. I can't remember. I think it was Odegaard, Lacazette, and someone else. I think maybe it was when we were watching the Brighton game. Just remind me, who was it? You said we had to. There was a combination of players.
I said away from home. One of the
Odegaard or Lacazette has to be benched.
Yeah, it was Odegaard or Lacazette. That's right.
One of them has to be benched away from home, just because. The other, either one of them will turn up, and this is very unlikely since maybe Norwich was the last time they both turned up. But one of them will turn up away from home, and which is very unlikely. And then physically they'll win a couple of their duels, and they'll be in the game but they're completely different players to what they are home and away from home. They both shy away from duels. They both don't want responsibility away from home. And that just kills us, especially when they're so important in the final third and in the midfield to progress the ball. Them two not being involved in play just kills us. So one of them has to be benched. So someone like Martinelli or Smith Rowe will take the responsibility that them two are meant to take, but they won't take it. So away from home, one of them always has to be benched for me. Like every single game left in the season, which is Chelsea, Spurs, Southampton, on Leeds at home. Yeah, but those 3 games, I think. And West Ham. West Ham's over as well.
Chris, what do you guys make of? I'm really against holding center back. So we've talked about in this space.
I'm not with it either.
I'll just preface this, but I'll ask you guys. Like I have said that Ben White, when we have the full, squad in there with Saliba, has an ability to play inverted right back. But that is a future case when we've got Saliba, Gabriel. We've got our progressives in the back there that allows that. For me, the whole part of this space that we're looking to do is to make sure that we put players in positions that they're very comfortable. Rob Holding is not a high line defender. There's not a case where, and we've seen when we give him the responsibility to build up, leaves.
Sunderland in the Carabao when he was trying to just run out.
Every time
they forced him to run out. They didn't. He wasn't trying to. They blocked every passing lane,
except for him.
15 yards, just run with the ball, because we don't trust you. And then we saw it against Burnley. They just started passing to White, right back, who had less angles to work with.
So you don't. For me, you don't remove something that's already okay to fix something that's not okay. Then you're left with everything is false. So you cannot remove Ben White and Gabriel from the middle of the park. That is something that you can't do. And by the way, Cedric's been good. Cedric has not been the reason that the balance of the defense has been poor. That's not been the case. And again, it comes up from a lot more higher up the pitch in the midfield, guys. Like I think we're you complicate things by removing players where they're comfortable, and Ben White's a major pillar to our progression. So putting him out wide at right back, while he's fine in terms of the inverted role and he can drive in midfield, and he can form one of the two there, what you do lose is that ability in duels and to sweep up in transition, because you're going to expose Rob Holding in transition, and especially against Son. We've seen that before. Chelsea, who use wide players like Werner out wide, that's a recipe for disaster. You don't want Rob Holding defending 1v1 against these teams. So that's not the play for me. Very simple, like we said, but I wanted to ask you guys, like, would you even entertain Rob Holding introduction?
No, I was seeing a lot of that on the timeline, that from some big Arsenal accounts saying the best team how we should put White right back and bring Holding in, because like the issue with that is that people see Tomiyasu out but don't realize that Cedric hasn't been bad. So the Tomiyasu being out is not the biggest issue of the team right now. So they want to fix a problem that just isn't there. There's no problem at right back right now. Well, there's no big enough problem to force White there. Cedric's been good the past 8-9 games. I don't know, since February the 18th.
I mean, would you chuck him in against Chelsea, Tomiyasu?
No, if he's not fit, no, there's no need. There's nothing. Chelsea don't have an aerial.
They said they were going to reevaluate him after Southampton. I'm pretty sure
Chelsea don't have an aerial threat there to force him in. So
no. But the thing is, the one thing I would say is, I don't think I would either. But the one thing is you can then move Cedric to left back.
No, I think that's the word. Yeah, you have to stick with Nuno Tavares.
We need to be simple. We need to stop like making everything so complicated. We just need to be simple. Play the players that you bought to play in those positions. He bought Tavares to be the backup left back when Tierney gets injured, because we knew he'd get injured.
And by the way, like we saw what happens when you put a right footer in the left half space. It forces you.
Yeah,
we did that at Burnley. Like we have to stop thinking about that, because Cedric is not ambipedal. He's not able to open himself up to the left half space. He's going to be forced into the right. It's going to be very predictable. Then Gabriel will not be able to progress up the pitch because he's having both Sambi and Cedric go into his zone. It's just it's not a feasible option. Like I think we do overcomplicate it, and Mikel has overcomplicated it. So we naturally as fans will as well. But it's really simple. Go back to a pivot. Have your Xhaka Sambi in the middle of the park. Your back four is going to be Tavares, Gabriel, White, Cedric. Ramsdale's obviously going to be in goal. And then up top, you're going to have Martinelli, ESR, Odegaard, and Saka. And you just flip between teams that require a false nine, where you put Emile in the hole. Or if you don't need that false nine, then you have Martinelli up top and you have ESR in the hole with 2 10s. And the decision when to go false nine and when not to go false nine, very simple, guys. You do it on primarily teams that employ a back three. That's the time that you would have a mover. We kind of saw it at Brighton. And then otherwise you can put a false nine if they don't have a back three and they don't build up in a back three. Now, Spurs, Chelsea, they do. So those are games that you're not going to want to employ a false nine. You want the 2 10s floating between the lines. That is what Conte has historically struggled the most with. Tuchel himself. You look back at games where Chelsea have struggled. It's when they've had floating 10s between the lines. They couldn't pick up the markers. So, no, those are times that you don't want a false nine. But other times, if you want Leeds, if you want Southampton, it can work. It's not my preferred option, but it could work. Southampton. Sorry, who?
You do it versus United.
United, for me, it doesn't matter what we do. I personally don't like it. I think that they're not going to have enough technical security that it matters. They don't really build in a 3 or anything. So for me, though, I would add a false 9 just because I feel they have really poor defenders out wide. And Harry Maguire, that little option in between him and whoever is playing, because it's going to be Alex Telles. It looks like Luke Shaw is out. Correct me if I'm wrong.
For the season.
He's potentially out for the season. So that corridor.
And Varane's injured as well.
And
it's telling us that corridor. It's going to be to see what goes on with that.
So that'll be the case. But look, I think part of this space sorry?
Oh God, no. Please stop. Please stop. Why would this is the main thing. Why are you creating you're taking areas of strength and trying to use them to fix areas of weakness. And when you're in a bind, you need to turn to your strengths. And Bukayo Saka at right wing, let's be real, he's one of the top 3 right wings in this league. And putting him at left back and making him do that role again, it's just not what we need right now. We need him doing what he does best. Progressing the ball, being an outlet, being able to take on players one-on-one, being able to grab a goal, grab an assist. That's what he's great. That's what he's great at, and he's doing very well at it. So we need to stop overcomplicating these and all these scenarios. For example, the Cedric left back, Tomiyasu left back, all these holding at centre back. These are all issues in my opinion, just insecurity from us as Arsenal fans, because we're not able to trust the signings that we've bought. And the same thing goes for Mikel as well. He's been the exact same way.
It's the same thing I was saying about
Cedric
to play left back. It's just creating unnecessary commotion when there just needs that doesn't need to even be an option. You have Tavares, he's not injured. If he was injured, then I'd hear the Saka left back shouts and all this stuff. But Tavares is fine, and Arteta needs to get over it and just play him left back. Honestly,
on Tomiyasu, I understand that there's a lot of questions for people. Ultimately, when you re-injure, I don't think Arsenal have been truthful. To be fair to people, it hasn't been a simple grade 1 calf. To be fair, they haven't really ever specified the severity of the calf injury, even the initial one. But when you re-injure another calf, for me, I think it's been torn. It's been almost 3 months, so it's impossible for it to be a short injury, just medically. These things take roughly 3 months if you are a completely tear. If it's a partial tear, it's 4 to 6 weeks. And then if it's something very simple, it's 7 to 10 days. So just based off the timeline that we have logically, I think it was a pretty severe calf tear. And they were just hiding it up because in the midst, we got a bunch of injuries. Now, if they're saying that he's potentially back in team training after Southampton, then it's a daily assessment by that point. And, if they do keep him fit, there's no issue. Because for me, I actually think he has been fit. They've just held back on 2 weeks to make sure that the fitness is perfect. They don't want to repeat because if he does,
there's no training pictures though. This is the thing.
No, he's been on the training pitch alone.
A
couple of weeks, but he hasn't been with the team. But he's been.
Oh, I see.
He hasn't been like with the team since that team training thing in middle of February.
Yeah,
like 18th of Feb. But since then, there's been no pictures of him.
But again, that's because I think he's fit, but they don't want to put a timeline. And the medical department has actually put a deadline for him on a recovery standpoint, not with the team. Because if they do rush him back, he could be out for the next 3 months after that, right? Like if he does suffer another tear.
There's no need to rush him back when Cedric isn't bad.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like last season, a lot of re-injuries happened because you had to rush we had to rush Partey back in because the replacement was playing poorly. So if Cedric and Lokonga, and if he gives Tavares a chance, aren't playing poorly, then you don't need to rush anyone back in. And when they come back in, they can be full strength. It happened with Saka even earlier in the season. Pepe wasn't performing, so we had to rush Saka back in. So we just need to wait. Like with the Tomiyasu thing, I'm not even sure why it's such a big topic. Like I've heard so many conspiracies that he just did something wrong. Like he was the one that did the, remember the news about the betting scandal?
The betting thing, yeah. He's had one yellow card, I'm pretty sure.
And all that stuff. So for me, it's just like, why is the focus on Tomiyasu when there's other big issues that we need to fix right now? Where Tomiyasu could have helped aerially versus Brighton, but not Cedric wasn't bad versus Brighton. He wasn't the big issue versus Brighton. Other guys were. So for me, just need to focus on.
We do need to talk about Spurs because they are obviously our main rivals in this. And see here, I know you had that tweet where you were like, the next 4 games or 5 games is going to be fun to watch or something like this. Do you want to?
Yes.
Do you want to explain why?
The next 5. Okay, so Spurs have played teams that allow a lot of space in transition. Obviously, Aston Villa, they created like 1.5 XG in the first half, and they just wasted chances. And obviously, they've got a rubbish back line. So and Kane,
it's minging.
Okay, Kane just feasted upon Tyrone Mings. So I I even told you before the game that Villa will lose to
Yeah, you did.
to Spurs. So I thought they'd win there, but I want to see them versus Brentford, where there's actual threats, both flanks, and they've got someone because they've got very aggressive front third centre backs in Dyer, Romero. They're very, very aggressive, and someone like Tony and Bomo kill that because Tony will drag them deep, and then what's his name, and Bomo uses the spaces in behind with Dyer not being quick enough to track back and stuff. So the games like verse, obviously, what's his name? Mwepu promised Arsenal fans that he's going to try his hardest to beat Spurs.
I don't trust that dude.
And all that nonsense.
He's had his amazing performance for the season.
The teams that they're playing now are just better teams with better attacking patterns and more threats to actually cause to their front foot centre backs.
You know what it is, though, mate? It's not even that for me. They have a much better organized press. Has anybody looked at Aston Villa's press?
It's awful. You can just play out wide and
you
bypass the front line by playing it to the right back.
Absolutely. And so for me, when you start looking at some of the teams that they're facing, Brighton are very likely to do a similar thing to what they employed against us, packing the center. And if they were to add a very aggressive middle three in the middle of the park, that's where Spurs are going to struggle because they still have yet to progress through the center. What they've been really good at in the last couple of games is making the most of Harry Kane, who's been dropping deep, and people have been losing their minds, but he's drawing markers out and releasing Son, but they haven't really progressed through the center. They used Kane to kind of backboard things off in wide areas. Yeah.
Just long balls or 50-yard balls across the floor from Romero, and Kane swivel and in behind to Kulusevski or Son. It's very, very predictable what they do, and the teams that Villa weren't tracking that.
Yeah, and if you have people that are lazy in tracking runners, it's very easy for Spurs to destroy you. They do have very good transition threats. That's one thing. And I've heard a lot of people about cheating XG, having a forward that's just super clinical, and they do have that. Like,
they scored 4 goals on 1 XG.
No problem. Yes, but the point is the entire, when you start quoting cheating XG, there's a big word in there, guys. It's cheating. It means that you're unlikely to sustain this. So you're talking about a very logical fallacy, and especially when you're looking at a long-term sample. So in the first couple games that maybe we isolate, fair play to them, they can score goals, but is that a sustainable way of playing? No, we've seen it with ourselves, with Lacazette and even Aubameyang back in 2018, 2019, who were, by the way, overperforming to a way greater potential.
They were the best ever.
Yeah, one of the best strike partnerships ever. So when you have, that's the evidence that we have for that style of play. So I'm really not worried about that. What I would be worried about is if they can get Oliver Skip back in play, they can get, if they can also find a way to involve people more in the center. That's when I would start to get worried about Spurs. And I think they're facing Brentford in the next 5. They're facing Brighton again.
Brighton, Brentford, Leicester
twice, I think.
Liverpool, and then Arsenal, and obviously Burnley.
Yeah, and Leicester aren't the same Leicester that have been there the entire time. They've got Fofana back. They're playing far better. So they aren't the same team. Yeah, Brentford have Josh Da Silva back, Ivan Toney, David Raya. They aren't the same Brentford as before. So for me, it's a very, if you're going to talk about the potential what if benefits with Spurs, you have to do the same to Arsenal. You have to carry the same energy. That's the thing for me. And the biggest thing that we can do as fans, focus on our lawn, focus on Spurs, essentially, making sure that it's not what they do, but more so what we do. If Mikel continues not doing the back, the kind of the pivot play, then yeah, we're in trouble. I'll be honest. Like, if he continues to have this pattern, then yeah, we're very much potentially in trouble. But I mean, this idea that we should be worried that we're 1 point behind, even though we've done poor to get them into the competition, that doesn't mean then that you're not favorites for it, especially when you've been outperforming them all season, not over a 5-game stretch. Like, it's
I honestly kind of prefer not being favorites.
Me too.
The Arsenal team prefers not being favorites.
yeah, they've gotten over adversity. Like Wolves was big adversity both games, and they won them. Like for me, obviously Spurs have got some good assets. Like Son is in some crazy form right now. He's on 17 league goals. Like he's catching Salah, and Salah has scored 4 goals since December. So yeah, he's catching Salah. Obviously Kane has been very good as well. I think Romero has stepped up a bit. That guy is very weird to me, very aggressive off the ball, but so calm.
He's
on the ball.
everywhere. He's not
Very
staying in
weird.
the back.
He's a very, very weird player. He's got completely different temperament on and off the ball. Like on the ball, he's so calm and like Edison, like, and off the ball, he's Puyol, like so and stuff like that. But they've still got so many holes, and if Villa was a serious attack, they would have scored four goals in the first half. Like they created so much to score in the first half. Like with Spurs, it's the first time they're playing before us since it got tight, and the team will have to react to Spurs' result rather than us. Spurs reacting to us, because obviously they won their last 2 after we lost our last 2, and they're a decent team and they've got a great transition threat. But when teams are a lot more organized and a lot more potent themselves, like Brentford have a bigger threat than Villa for me to score goals. Like they've proved it. So when the team,
to be fair, it is 3 points, not 1 point. But still, the point is, it's within one result.
One win. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not 1 point, but 1 win. No, like for me, I don't even think it's about an attacking potency, mate. It's about people that have a midfield that can press. It's very simple. They've yet to face a midfield that can sit there and press. To be fair, Leicester will have their work cut out for them with Yuri Tielemans, who struggled even today, towing a carrot.
Giving away balls left, right, and centre. But Dewsbury Hall has been on great form the past 2 months.
Yeah, but when you look at it, Fofana's been massive to them, to being able to control transitions again. Like he's so important to that team. But Brentford, much tighter in the middle of the park. Like I said, Brighton are likely to employ that very same Casado, Wepu, and Basuma kind of midfield 3, where I think Spurs are going to very much this game against Brighton, if they do employ that kind of center block, is going to tell us a lot. Not only will it tell us about the 5-game consistency mark that we've been judging a lot of the other teams about, but it will also let us know what Spurs' pivot is actually about, kind of to answer really Mush's question here. Part of the issue that I think with Spurs' pivot is they're safe. They're unathletic, and they prefer spaces that are tight. So Bentancur loves the fact that he can just lop a ball up to Kane, who drops a ball back out to Son or Kulusevski kind of on the wings. That's their one pattern of play. Is Bentancur able to thread balls through the needle between players between the lines? I'm not too sure. Is he able to chase a game running back to goal? No, not for me. And that's why I think they are missing Oliver Skip, for themselves. Oliver Skip is really big, as odd as it is for them. He's probably one of their better midfielders. He was even before.
He is the best midfielder. He is the best midfielder at Spurs, probably.
Yeah, and that for me says it all. So when you combine those things, I'm going to be really interested to see how they face Brighton, how they deal with that threat when you cut off the center, because that's the big thing, right? Teams just haven't marked Kane, who's dropping in between the lines, and that's really what Spurs are. And if you cut that off, they're very similar to Benfica, actually, in the Europa League with Darwin Núñez, who we faced, if people remember, in the Europa League a couple of years ago. They have a very good mid block, and they have a striker that does well to drop between the lines and spring out to their outlets. They are very similar in that mold. They're very similar to a Benfica, very similar, like a classic European team. But Conte still doesn't have his major defense, and as well his attack. He doesn't have his Lukaku to latch on to those.
All his fullbacks. He doesn't have the fullbacks that he trusts in duels like Hakimi. He doesn't have that.
Yeah, and Doherty also now has out for the
whole season. Yeah.
So Emerson is essentially guaranteed to start, and we know what that brings.
Reguilon's back, who Conte doesn't trust, that he was playing Doherty left wing back to to get in behind on the on the left wing and get in the box and try to score.
Yeah.
But like obviously Leicester, they play Leicester as well. Do you guys think West Ham deserves a mention in this race? Do you think United deserve a mention? Obviously, United lost.
I mean, what's the point differential?
United's on 51, I think.
The trouble is, mate, by points, I think that
United and West Ham on 51.
You can't count a team out. So for me, if there's a 5-point swing, it will take at least 4 games for you to be mathematically in it.
I mean, they're both at this moment in time. They're both 6 points off fourth. United and West Ham. United.
I mean, they're absolutely mathematically in it. If we're talking about their style of play and how they've been playing of late, then no, they just absolutely have not been. And United are in trouble. Like, I think they need to stem the bleeding themselves. I mean, to me, it seems as though they're not listening to Ralph Rangnick, period. So if you combine that with West Ham and the fact that they're going quite far in the Europa League, I think that that's actually something for us to take advantage of. It's actually excellent that West Ham won. When you look at it, Kurt Zouma, I think, also has got a major injury. So when you're looking at it, and we face them in between their 2 kind of semifinal legs, which is a big point of contention. So I think with those 2 teams, it's less so. It's more about quality with them. I think they're at a lower quality than Spurs. Spurs are our greatest competition for top 4 if you're talking on a quality level. Of course, they're still in it just because mathematically they're within reason, but I would think within the next week or 2, I think West Ham may fall out, as well as United. They may fall out of contentions by the time that we play them, because we win that game, for example, and I think that puts them out of top 4. It basically cements it between us and Spurs, and I think West Ham will probably, by the time we face them, but for me before, will have kind of put themselves out of the running. Which is fine. Like, if I was them, I would focus completely on the Europa League.
Europa League, yeah.
For me, it's their best opportunity at Champions League football.
And they can do it.
Mate, when you get into a semifinal and a final of knockout competitions, anything goes. And it's no longer about systems and quality. It's about your ability on the day to be compact and take advantage of your chances. And for me, Moyes has been excellent at that throughout his entire career. If you isolate a team and a manager that just is able to keep his distances tight and able to maximize his attacking output, that's kind of Moyes, right? Like, I don't think he'll take you to the elite levels, but he really suits knockout football. And that West Ham team, by the way, really suit knockout football. Prime outlets in Antonio, Bowen, a strong pivot. Yeah, Declan Rice, one of the best defensive midfielders in the world.
The best.
Without Kurt Zouma, though, it is a little tough, especially for top 4. Like, for me, that injury basically cemented. At least if I was a manager, I'd focus on knockout football. It's 3 games versus 7 that I'd have to overturn, and even then, I'm relying on people to lose points. I don't think West Ham. It's not even in their control. So
6. They've got 6. They've got 6 games left. They've played 32.
Yeah.
31.
And who are they playing again? Why don't we put up those fixtures? Because I think it'll be done by the time we face them.
Well, West Ham have Burnley, Chelsea, and then the Europa League semi-final first leg, then us, then the second leg, then Norwich.
Yeah.
Then West Ham versus Man City, sorry, and then Brighton
Chelsea,
is their last game.
Chelsea, us, Man City. 3 of their last 6 games, right? Like, that for me isn't feasible for you then to hope that you're going to overturn a 6-point cushion, right? So I would focus on the Europa League if I was them. And then in terms of United,
I mean, their next opponent is Frankfurt.
Yeah.
I think they'll win that tie. They both won through not being the better team in general.
Like, honestly, my money is now on a West Ham, maybe even a Rangers final.
I did think West Ham would win the Europa League, but I didn't want them to. But I did think they would. Obviously, Declan Rice put in
the Europa League. No, I thought you said Barcelona.
No, I thought you said Barcelona.
Mm-mm.
Anyway, it shows that it is what it is. But yeah, West Ham,
I think
they did play well. They did play well today. But they're the first team. This is a random stat, but first English team to beat Lyon at their stadium since Thierry Henry in 2001. Arsenal in 2001. So it's a big thing for them to, and it's their first semi-final since 76, 1976. Currently, you were even born. Damn. Yeah. So West Ham,
calm.
they won't get.
Calm.
I don't think they won't get to. Well, they played the most games in the league and 6 points behind Spurs, and Spurs have a game in hand on them, and we've got 2 games in hand on them. So they won't get top 4, I don't think. But
Yeah, I mean, I think. Thank you, appreciate that. I think the last topic I think is because it is the top 4 show as it were. Let's not focus on the negative. Let's say what are the consequences for if we do get top 4 and if we don't get top 4. Like both scenarios. I think we focus so much on the negative of we're missing. What does getting top 4 mean for this club?
What do you mean?
I think it makes you skip a step. And so what I mean by that is when you look in reality, it doesn't halt a project, but you obviously doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that with Champions League football, you get Champions League caliber players that open yourselves up to it. But what I do think is you can actually create distance between yourself and Man United, who are getting a manager now that they'll finally be a threat within a couple years. Now, it's unknown if their board will allow them to operate in the same manner that we've given kind of autonomy to Mikel. That's also very unlikely and probably a different story. But what it does do is it gives Arsenal an opportunity, if they were to get top 4, to kind of catapult them to relevance a lot quicker. And you improve that potential when you compare it to Spurs, who probably have another year of Antonio Conte, which I still don't agree is as set in stone. Like I think if Spurs, for example, miss out on top 4, I don't know if Kane stays with them. I don't know if Antonio Conte stays with them. So for me, what top 4 represents is an ability to move this project up a year. If you were believing that you wanted Arsenal to kind of compete for major honors and major titles, for me, if you get Champions League football, you can expect that the following season. Not next season, but the following one. So if you're looking at it, what is that, guys? Now, what's my math? 2023, 2024? That season is when you would expect essentially trophy competition. Now, if we don't get top 4, you delay that by a year, right? That's the effect of this. And what we really need is we've done this window where we've recruited a large amount of players to plug holes. We've had that pre-Liverpool window. We've talked about it a lot on the channel, and even Jamie Carragher has mentioned it on Sky Sports. What we need is that Alisson, Van Dijk. We need that marquee signing window to take us up the level. Now, can you do that without Champions League football? No, you can't. The very best, that window, that emulation of that type of window only happens with Champions League football. Now, does that mean that we can't improve? No. You absolutely can improve without Champions League football, but it pushes the project back a year.
We've seen improvement without Champions League football the past year. We've seen other teams get improved without Champions League football. We've seen Chelsea. We've seen Liverpool got better without it. Obviously, they got to where they are now with it, but to get to the top 4, they had to improve with guys like Firmino and Mane and all that stuff. So yeah, like missing out on top 4 would be like big noise. I don't think it'd be as big within the club. Obviously, it'd be disappointing and stuff, but you can still get some of the targets and the names that you're looking at without the Champions League football. Obviously, you can't get the upper echelon of players that a move for that fans are touting for, like let me just say that the big names on the market, so like a Declan Rice or a Jude Bellingham would be gone if you don't get Champions League immediately. That those big names in the market, I'm not going to say we're getting him, but Haaland, these types of names, these names that
Victor Osimhen,
these names that everybody's going in for or are going to be the most expensive in the window are immediately out of your grasp just because you don't have Champions League. So the transfer window immediately changes, and obviously we know that they plan for a window without Champions League and with Champions League and without Europe at all. Obviously, we're not going to be we're not going to miss out on Europe. So we're going to be in Europa or the Champions League. So they have a plan, and the plan alters a bit, but in the grand scheme of things, we'd still be a top four caliber team in England, and we'd still probably go far in the Europa League next year. And
Well, also it's also worth
have a chance
mentioning
to
that
move.
Arsenal didn't agree with BoP. They didn't project us to be a top 4 team this
Yeah,
year.
they didn't.
And in fact, their entire projection was to get us back solidified into that top 6, and then which is
And then
get
go,
back into Europe, and then the following year was to get top 4. And I believe
which makes a lot more sense, because
yeah,
what happened this year is that not well, everybody underestimated us, including the players themselves. They underestimated the caliber of the team themselves. They didn't expect to be in this position. Obviously, people just didn't realize the actual quality of the team and the quality that other teams lack. And then you see what happened with United. Like, United were a massive PR machine. Like they looked like they were the next big thing. They're gonna win the league and all this stuff. Spurs looked like they won the first 3 games, they were top of the league, and then they lost their manager and all this stuff. So Arsenal had a different projection to everybody else, and the whole media has changed to projecting Arsenal. And now the players, they believe their own hype to a certain extent. They need to believe it a lot more. For me, they need to believe how good they are a lot more. Like Saka has probably started to now with all the attention he's getting, but other players need to get into the element, and just Arteta needs to help. Like for me, before we go, he needs to, just to bring it back to Arsenal, he just needs to keep it simple. Honestly, simplicity is key. If you want to get a slogan from me, just keep it simple. Play your left back in the left back position. Bench the striker that gets less touches than the goalkeeper. Bench him. Keep Cedric. That's my guy. Keep Cedric. Keep Cedric there. Don't rush Tomiyasu in when he's been out for 3 months. You don't need to. Don't bring another massive injury that the team misses out on. You don't need to risk players to come back in when your players are playing fine. And put your biggest goal threats as close to the goal as possible. Smith Rowe has 9 league goals.
slogan.
Yeah, that's what Smith Rowe has 9 league goals. Saka has 9 league goals.
They're having their most productive seasons.
Martinelli has 6 goals, 6 league goals. Odegaard has 5 league goals. Lacazette has 4 league goals and 3 pens. He's not as productive as anybody else in that front 4. Him and Nketiah are the same level, and Nketiah starts off the bench. So please put the front 4 with the front 4 and just keep it simple. Honestly, you can you can change your systems in that, because the players are very versatile. Like you could play in a middle false 9, or you could play your dual 10s. You could do that, but just bench Lacazette. That's the first thing, yeah, and play Tavares. That's for me with Arteta. He just needs to keep it simple, and we'll cruise top 4. Honestly.
Yeah, for me, really, really, really simple. Get your players in the positions that they're most comfortable in, and let's get our biggest goal threats as close to each other as possible. But as Chris said, my slogan is get them as close to goal as possible. It's really easy, and one of my favorite is when you talk about slogans. One of my teachers used to say something to me really simply. Keep it simple, stupid. Not just keep it simple, but sometimes we overcomplicate things as fans and as coaches. And Mikel is very prone to this, as much as the Galaxy Brain Brigade will have him say. But when you look at it, let's change to a pivot. Keep our back 4. Play Nuno Tavares. Do not close the door on that. And when you look at ourselves, it has to be a front 4 of the youngsters. They are our most productive attackers this season, period. Gabriel Martinelli, ESR, both having their most productive seasons in their entire careers, guys. Like their goal and assist tallies this year are greater than their career totals. Bukayo Saka is having his greatest production year. Like it makes 0 sense to me not to get these kids as close to each other as possible. And yeah, of course, don't leave Lukonga on an island. Absolutely. Like, it's really quite simple. He needs a friend. He needs his Wilson. So let's put Granit Xhaka there, who had an excellent interview, by the way. Very much worth everybody's time. And yeah, really quick, Ishak, no one's comparing ourselves to Liverpool. What we're saying is that in order to take the next step in our progression, we need to have a marquee summer. And a marquee summer is similar to what Liverpool.
The biggest example. There's no other example.
There's no other example. I mean, unless you wanted to do City, which we are not like. But they are very similar of a progression team. So we have to take a marquee summer to take the next step. And that only opens with Champions League football. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that's enough slogans from me. How about you, Kurt?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's a large overreaction on what's going on. I think it's a large overreaction. I remember before international break, we were finishing third. Now we're finishing eighth again. I mean, there's a massive turnaround every time. I just want to reiterate, like, it's very much an open race. There's still quite a few games left. There's 8 games left. Let's just see what happens. Hopefully we can revert to some simplicity, and hopefully we can just get back on track. Because the minute we get back on track, the fans will get back on track, and we'll all start feeling happy again. And that's what we all want at the end of the day. It's been an interesting hour. I think we've gone on for an hour now, and I want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in. It's been very nice seeing all the interactions today. It's been very nice hearing from you.
In fact, no, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you two a question. It's not about the top 4, but do you think we'll get a Man City Liverpool final, Champions League final?
I do.
Ooh, I do. Yeah. The biggest threat is obviously Real Madrid, but I just don't see them being able to do. I think with that Atletico Madrid game, it's very much a case of a team getting over what they. That's what they needed. This team, they needed to grind out a result. And Atletico's president, the comments he made was, I loved it so much.
You know what?
Accusing other teams
really
of negative football. I mean, come on.
If Ancelotti would trust Camavinga, I'd actually put them to have a real chance. But he just doesn't trust Camavinga. I don't know why. He's come on to boss PSG and dug them out of a hole right for the last 2 knockouts. But
he just brings them on when Cruz is tired or got a yellow card.
Yeah, but no, I think we see a Liverpool Manchester City final, which, by the way, is the pinnacle of football at this moment.
Literally.
So it'll be
the biggest Champions League final in a long time.
You know what I can't wait for? The camera to zone in on Pep. That man is hands down the funniest character in all of football. I won't have
Did you see the end of the City Liverpool game?
He walked away and he came back and he gave him the biggest hug.
Biggest slap. And I'm like,
I'm telling you, Klopp's hand hurt. He hurt Klopp's hand. He went in for that one.
It's one of those when your boy gives you that handshake and he's trying to do like the crush your fingers kind of thing. And
they
can say what they want. They do not like each other. I don't care what they.
No, they do. There's so many clips like when what's his name? Pep was at Dortmund and Klopp. Pep was at Bayern and Klopp was at Dortmund. He used to have an interview and then Klopp would come in and he'd stand up and end it and just walk away and then call Klopp is your turn and stuff like that. We do so much stuff with Klopp. Like, that would be the biggest. The build up to that final will be incredible, and then it will be incredible for the Prem as well, like for the Prem marketing and stuff like that. To have 3 semi-finalists and then another finalist. What's that? Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool. That's 5 finals in a row. You have an English representation.
I mean, just out of curiosity, could Emery do it?
The Bayern final, the COVID final, that don't count.
Could Emery do it?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Bayern dominated like 130 minutes. No, like not sorry. They dominated 100.
There's just something there, man. There's something there. I don't know.
There's nothing there. It's nothing.
I still. Let me be clear.
Get where he is massive.
I think it's Man City's. The other 2 think it's Liverpool's. Yeah, I think it's Man City's. Yeah.
Man City touched Liverpool in a final. There's no chance. There's no chance unless Klopp goes like does stupid and starts Jota. Unless he starts Jota, Liverpool's gonna smoke City in that final.
By the way, Firmino in that second half was. People forgot. People have forgot.
We can talk about this another stream.
We'll do. Here, I'll promise this for everybody watching. You know what? We'll do a proper. We'll do a proper preview and review for the Champions League final. Absolutely. I have some interesting thoughts. I still think what I said at the very beginning of the season, I think City are going to do the double this year. I think that they will break their duck. The
Prem and FA, isn't it?
in the Prem.
The Prem and Champions League.
Yeah.
You said Liverpool before.
You said Liverpool.
No.
You did.
You did.
When we predicted it, I don't even remember. On the space, I think.
Did I? I swear I said City. I think City will break.
No, everyone said Liverpool. I said City.
No, he said. Yeah, we asked you said Liverpool, and he said City. I think.
Really?
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Pep is going to do it. Now, I don't know why. This guy is gonna. For him, I think he's gonna have some kind of juju that makes sure that he.
Did he?
It would be. He said at the start of the season he did. At the start of the season he did.
Yeah.
But for me, with this, it's probably the biggest game.
It's such a
it's the biggest game that we could have had. There's no other. Maybe a Manchester United sneaking it there to the final would have been as big. But to actually watch a game of football is the biggest game we could see in the final. And I don't want. Obviously, Unai Emery's done a madness to get them to the semi-final, past Bayern Munich and stuff. Like, I don't think anyone predicted that for them to get past Bayern Munich, but they can't. Surely they can't get past Liverpool. Surely.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
They really don't. And Liverpool are the most. Liverpool's the most. Logic,
all my brain says it's Liverpool easy, but I don't know, man.
They're the most potent team in Europe.
I don't know. I think Pep is gonna do what he set out to do, because I don't think that he's got much longer. I'll be honest with you guys in the league too. I think both him and Klopp are kind of on a time clock, and I just have a feeling that he's going to turn around in the next couple of games. There's this idea that City have fell off completely, which I really disagree with. The only reason that this could falter is Kyle Walker, who I don't know. He's got a injury, and I
really hope he's out.
If he's out, it kind of almost guarantees Liverpool, and it really puts into question the title for the Prem. Kyle Walker is that important to them, so we have to find out kind of what happens. But
he's out
so no one's winning a treble this year.
No, said it's a big worry. It's very worrying what happened to Kyle Walker in the Atletico game. So he's definitely missing at least this weekend.
And by the way,
that would be so like.
I don't know if we have
this weekend as well.
Yeah,
that'd be an insane season. Pep winning the Champions League and the Prem, and Klopp winning the domestic cups.
Well, they do play each other on Saturday in the semi.
Yeah, you know what it is, guys, and just, I don't know if we have any City fans in the chat. I know mostly we're all Arsenal fans, but if you are Kyle Walker and you're looking at that protective boot again, it is absolutely just like precaution, just so people understand. We do those in case there's a potential fracture. He had like an eversion sprain, which just means that his ankle kind of went out to the side, and those normally result with potential fractures a little bit higher up. So it's all protective. It's not guaranteed that he's out for the rest of the season and any of that stuff. But if he does have like a high ankle sprain, he'll be out for the rest of the season. And that is a potential mechanism. So I think finding the fitness of Kyle Walker is really crucial to City's hopes and objectives this season. I mean, can you imagine after all this, they get an injury to Kyle Walker and they don't get a trophy?
and then Pep decides not to play Fernandinho instead of in the final.
Who again?
Or he plays Gundogan instead of Rodri or whatever.
Which he won't play Fernandinho because he's said that he's leaving. Did you see that? Like,
I don't know why he's reacting like that. Fernandinho is 37.
Yeah,
and he signed a 1-year extension just for this season.
Yeah.
So
I just don't think he liked him being announced. He was like, I didn't know anything.
For everyone, like for me, Pep.
It's like one of those things that everyone knows, but no one, you just don't want it being said at the moment. Wait for the end of the season, send it to the.
He's perfect for the media. Like what he does and how he reacts to stuff is perfect for the media. So I don't know. He probably knew himself. Like, he just needs to focus on himself and not play and actually play a DM, and then he'll have a chance. But
yeah, and you know what? and we'll definitely, and guys, we'll definitely have a preview for everybody to kind of see those things. There's a lot of football to play. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Put some comments again to make sure how we can improve. We always love doing these spaces. Thank you for everybody for coming in, stopping by for this little top 4 chat. We're going to be back tomorrow with a preview. Of course, we play Southampton, a way to get back to winning ways. We haven't lost 3 on the bounce in the league with Mikel, period. So that always goes well. And Southampton, I think haven't lost. They've lost what, 4 on the bounce at home?
We have lost 3 in a row, George. We did it at the start
in the Premier League.
At the start of the season, the first 3 games.
Oh, we did, didn't we?
This guy, man. I was thinking, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I swear I saw a thing where we hadn't lost in three in a row. But yeah, that's true. We did lose 3.
That was before, but with a fully fit squad.
Boraz, I'm not even saying it. Just let him be. Just let him be.
But no, and then Southampton, of course. I think people would be actually more confident in it if Southampton had won the last 4 games. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. We're definitely going to be back with you guys tomorrow at 8 p.m. for a preview. So make sure you guys check in. Again, do all those lovely things, like, comment, subscribe. If you want to be a member, you can click the little join button that's beside the subscribe button. I got some content for you. I think, Chris, you're going to release those vlogs. So yeah, excellent. So we'll release some vlogs for you guys, membership content. And yeah, can't wait to see you guys tomorrow for the Southampton preview. So thanks so much. We'll catch you guys on the next one.